Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of dusty cobblestones, thick perfumes, gossiping bathhouse attendants, and uncomfortable sandals. You'll be spending the night as a sex worker in ancient Rome. Yes, really. Don't worry, the toga is optional. But the attitude is not. You've got sass, survival instincts, and a whole city of unpredictable clients. You work beside steaming bathhouses, echoing temples, and alleyways that smell like wine, sweat, and ambition. It's early morning, and you wake up not to birdsong, but to someone shouting about overdue figs in the street below. You're curled up on a thin straw mat inside your one-room cell, a cella meretricia, barely bigger than a closet. The wall still smells faintly of last night's incense, and your back is doing that thing where it feels like you fought a bear in your sleep. No pillow, of course, just a folded tunic under your head, and a sandal that somehow ended up on your face. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers lived in brothels full-time or rented by the hour. But one thing's for sure, your place isn't luxurious. There's a small niche in the wall with a faded little statue of Venus, smeared with yesterday's oil offerings. You light a stubby beeswax candle and mutter something halfway between a prayer and a complaint. Your first task. Not breakfast. No, it's locating your other sandal. You find it under a stool, next to a crust of bread from 3 days ago and a beetle that's clearly paying rent. You stretch, crack your neck, and pull on your stola, slightly stained but strategically pinned. This is your uniform. Technically, you're not allowed to wear the clothes of a proper Roman matron. So you go for something that rides the line between respectable and suggestive. Down in the alley, the city is already buzzing. You can hear ox carts rumbling, vendors shouting, and someone enthusiastically vomiting near the bakery. Rome smells like olive oil, sewage, and ambition. A lovely perfume if you're into historical authenticity. You splash your face with a little water from the communal basin, then rub a dab of saffron-infused oil onto your neck. It doesn't quite cover the scent of last night's garlic stew, but it adds mystery. You stare into a polished metal disc you call a mirror, and try to make your face look less like just woke up on straw and more like Roman temptress who charges a full denarius. A denarius is the dream, by the way. Realistically, you're hoping for a couple of asses, the Roman coin, not the body part, although you see plenty of both. Prices vary wildly, depending on your location, looks, and whether the client thinks you remind him of his dead wife or his favorite goat. That's happened. You don't talk about it. A knock on the door makes you jump. It's Livia, a fellow worker and your occasional friend, depending on the time of day and whether she's stolen your sponge again. She grins through the curtain. You ready, bathhouse crowd's already pouring in. One of the Greeks brought wine. You sigh, pull on your sandals, and brace yourself. Another day. Another round of men who think your job is a hobby and their coin buys your silence. And just as you step out into the sunlight, blinking and adjusting your shoulder strap, you remember it's Saturnalia next week, which means extra tips, extra drunkenness, and the real possibility that someone's going to mistake you for a priestess. Again. That ended awkwardly last time. Still, at least it wasn't as bad as the day you accidentally propositioned a statue. In your defense, it was dark, and the statue had really great calves. Rome isn't gentle, but it's yours. The street is noisy. The air is thick with bread and smoke. And somewhere in the distance, a musician is already out of tune. You walk past a mural of Venus, raise 2 fingers to her in salute, and head toward your post by the baths. Just another morning in the Empire. You arrive at your usual spot just outside the Thermae, Rome's bustling public baths, where the stone pavement is warm under your sandals and smells faintly of lemon oil, mildew, and ancient sweat. This is prime real estate clients stream in and out of the baths all day. Togas loose, inhibitions looser. But before you can get to work, there's a sacred ritual to perform, making your face look like someone worth overpaying. You pull a worn little satchel from under your tunic and kneel behind a column, unwrapping your makeup kit like it's a soldier's weapon roll. Inside, a block of Cerussa lead-based white makeup, a tiny pot of fucus for red lips and cheeks, and a little stick of coal for eyeliner. You dab your fingers with some leftover olive oil thick, slightly rancid, and smooth it over your cheeks to make them glow in the sun. The sarussa goes on next, giving you the pallid, powdered look Roman men inexplicably found irresistible. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers really wore this much makeup or if the poets just exaggerated, but you've learned that exaggeration sells. You outline your eyes in black, trace your lashes, and smear the fucus with a cracked fingernail until your lips look appropriately bee-stung. Not from nature, from repeated application and mild lead poisoning. A passing water seller pauses to watch you. "You know that stuff will kill you," he says with a toothy grin. "You don't even look up. Better than dying poor." He shrugs and keeps moving. Your final touch is perfume. You open a small clay vial and dab the oil behind your ears, on your wrists, and just a hint between your breasts. Presentation matters. It smells like myrrh, roses, and something spicy you can't quite identify. The label says satyr's breath. You suspect it's just wine and herbs with a good PR team. You have a second vial for more specialized jobs. It contains a blend of crocodile dung and fermented acacia. Yes, really. Some Egyptian merchants swore by it as both a contraceptive and a perfume. Honestly, it smells like sadness. But some clients find it exotic. As you finish, Livia plops down beside you with her own pot of rouge and a burnt stick she uses for eyeliner. You hear about Cassia, she mutters, eyes scanning the street for eavesdroppers. She bit a client. You snort. Which part? Don't know. But she's banned from the bathhouse now. We might inherit her corner. You nod. Prime corner. Cassia always had a way of talking clients into paying double and convincing them it was their idea. You glance at the line forming at the bathhouse entrance. Men in sweaty tunics, young patricians reeking of wine, the occasional older senator doing his best to avoid eye contact with women who know exactly how many coins he hides in his belt. A young man walks by, trailing oil and a cloud of rose perfume. He catches your eye, then quickly looks away. First-time client, maybe, or someone pretending he doesn't know you. Either way, you mark him mentally, likely to tip if flattered. Possibly weepy afterward. You press your toes against the warm stone and glance up at the sky. It's going to be a long, hot day. Your makeup's already melting a little. The city buzzes around you, full of whispers, chariots, and the occasional aggressive goose. And just when you think you might get a moment of peace, a shadow falls across your lap. You look up. It's your Leno, the man who owns the building you rent from, your working papers, and, occasionally, your patience. He doesn't say anything, just holds out his hand. You sigh and hand over a small pouch with yesterday's earnings. 3 asses, a button, and a polished bone token someone swore was from the Emperor's own game set. He weighs the pouch in his hand, snorts, and walks away. Livia leans in. You're short. I'm always short. Better find a client before he finds you again. You tuck your perfume vials back into your tunic and roll your shoulders. You're painted, perfumed, and officially broke. Time to get to work. Just another glamorous morning in ancient Rome. Your shift truly begins when you hear the familiar slap-slap of leather soles shuffling your way, your first client of the day. He appears from the direction of the baths, cheeks flushed, tunic rumpled, and hair damp in that overly smug, I just got massaged by a very disinterested Greek man sort of way. He stops in front of you with a wobble and a smile that's too wide. Salve, he says, trying to sound like a senator. He's not a senator. He's not even sober. You give him your usual once-over. Belt pouch looks moderately full. Tunic dyed a cheap saffron, not the color of someone important, but someone trying to look like they are. Fingers ink-stained. Probably a scribe or clerk. Definitely thinks he's clever. Probably going to talk too much. Salve, you reply sweetly. You looking for a tour of the 7 pleasures, or just someone to tell you you're clever? He laughs a little too loudly and winks, fumbling for his coin purse. You're funny. I like funny. You smile with practiced patience. I like paying customers. He produces a single denarius. You blink. That's a day's wage for a soldier. He's either very generous, very bad at math, or about to ask for something very weird. You raise an eyebrow. You buying me dinner or just my time? He grins. Depends how good the time is. So he's one of those the performative charmers who like to pretend it's a date. You sigh inwardly, but nod toward the shaded alley you sometimes use cleaner than your cella, and with fewer ants. As you lead the way, he chatters behind you. Something about the Senate, something about olives, something about how he's different from other men, which is usually a red flag in any century. Historians still debate whether sex workers in Rome had much autonomy. Some were enslaved, others technically free but economically trapped. You're somewhere in between. You've got papers. Technically, you can leave. Technically, but the moment you stop paying rent, your Leno makes life very uncomfortable. The alley is cool and quiet. You sit him down on a low stone ledge, drape your stola just enough for effect, and gently take his hand when he keeps gesturing too much. You want to keep that coin, you whisper, or talk it into getting lonely. That finally shuts him up. The rest of the encounter is brief, awkward, and, to your immense relief, uneventful. He sweats like a frightened boar, says something halfway through about his mother, and leaves in such a hurry he forgets his sandal. You toss it after him. You smooth your stola, wipe your hands on a cloth, and lean back against the wall, eyes closed for a moment. The city hums beyond the alley, a constant buzz of carts, footsteps, and the occasional yell about overpriced fish. Then you hear it, Livia's cackle. You open your eyes. She's standing just around the corner, arms folded, looking delighted. You really know how to pick 'em, she says. I pick whoever pays. He left a denarius. You show her the coin. She whistles. You're buying the wine tonight. You grin. Only if we survive the afternoon. She stretches beside you, and for a moment, you both sit in comfortable silence. The alley's cool shade offers a brief escape from the heat, the noise, and the unrelenting weight of having to charm men who think hygiene is optional. Then Livia leans over. You hear about that matron who hired Felicia last week. You blink. A woman. Yup. Draped in purple silk. Smelled like lemons and law. Paid 2 aurei just to talk. Said her husband was boring. You stare. 2 aurei could buy you a new mattress, and maybe a mattress stand. I should start wearing purple. You should start listening to old ladies. A breeze stirs your hair. Somewhere nearby, a vendor shouts about fresh dates, and a musician starts playing a tune that sounds vaguely obscene. You tuck the coin into your waistband, adjust your stola, and step back into the sun. There's work to be done. The sun climbs higher, and the streets near the Thermi begin to swell with the midday bath crowd, sweaty men looking to rinse, preen, and occasionally proposition someone on the way in or out, which means it's prime time for you and Livia to take your places, like perfectly disheveled shopkeepers at a very weird farmer's market. You return to your post, brushing off a spot on the low stone ledge with the dignity of someone preparing a throne. Around you, Rome hums with steam, footsteps, and the slippery squeak of oil-covered sandals against stone. The front of the bathhouse smells like olive oil, unwashed ambition, and disappointment in male hygiene. Your position outside the balnea is technically illegal. Sex work isn't banned in Rome, but zoning laws are fuzzy and generally enforced with bribes. Still, most vigils the local watchmen know to look the other way, especially if they want a discount later. A group of young men strolls out of the bathhouse in varying degrees of togalessness, their tunics clinging like soggy towels. One of them makes eye contact and immediately trips over his own sandal. You give him a small wink and a pitying smile, which only deepens the shade of red spreading across his chest. He disappears around the corner with the speed of a startled rabbit. Adorable, Livia mutters. Probably thinks looking at us means he's going to hell. Hell is real, you reply. And it smells like the latrines in the frigidarium. Historians still argue whether the clientele of Roman sex workers were primarily lower class or included upper ranks as well. From what you've seen, everyone dips in. Senators with rings on every finger, soldiers on leave, slaves trying to spend a stolen coin, even poets. The worst of the lot they pay in flattery and leave in tears. Speaking of, you spot a familiar figure emerging from the steam. He's older, paunchy, and walking with the exaggerated swagger of someone who wants everyone to believe he's not bald under that wreath of laurels. That's my afternoon regular, Livia says. sighing. The one who makes you call him Hercules. Oh, the moaner. Worse, the explainer. You wince. Ugh. The ones who narrate every single move. Livia heads off to intercept him, her smile professional, her gait poised somewhere between inviting and resigned. You're left alone, for now, with the swirling chaos of Rome's public hygiene hub. You take a moment to lean against the column behind you, breathing in the hot, herb-scented air. The baths are a marvel heated by an elaborate underground furnace system called a hypocaust. They're one of the few places in the city where people genuinely try to be clean. And yet, somehow, they still emerge smelling like roasted onions and regret. Nearby, a vendor hawks honey cakes, his voice rising above the murmurs. Cakes for lovers, cakes for fighters, guaranteed to sweeten your tongue or shut it up. Your stomach growls. A short man in a green tunic sidles up beside you, pretending to look at the bathhouse wall art. He glances at you sideways and clears his throat. Are you, busy? You glance him up and down. New sandals, over-oiled curls, anxious eyes. First-timer. Probably someone's apprentice sneaking out for a lunchtime errand. Not if you're polite. You say, he blushes so hard you worry he'll combust. I mean, how much for... You gesture subtly with 2 fingers, 2 asses. He nods quickly, fumbling with his coin purse. As you walk him discreetly toward the shadowed corner, he mumbles, I've never done this before. You give him your warmest, most non-threatening smile. I'd never have guessed. What follows is awkward, fast, and surprisingly wholesome. He thanks you at least 5 times, offers you a honey cake from his bag, and scampers off before you can respond. You sit back down, holding the cake, slightly stunned. Livia returns a few moments later, fanning herself with a stolen laurel leaf. If I have to hear one more metaphor about plowing the fields of passion, I will plow someone into the Tiber. You offer her a bite of the honey cake. Bless that blushing child, she says, accepting it without question. The 2 of you sit quietly for a moment, watching the midday crowd. Rome's streets pulse with life vendors, musicians, stray dogs, sweating bathers, and the occasional philosopher pacing in circles and muttering about stoicism. In the background, you hear a loud splash and someone yell, "That was my sponge." You both chuckle. You ever wonder what it's like, Livia says after a pause, to just not have to do this? You consider it, sure, but then I remember I'm excellent at it. Fair? You both laugh, your shoulders bumping slightly. The air smells like sweat and honey. You've got 2 asses in your pouch, half a cake in your hand, and a few more hours before the shadows stretch long across the forum. Time to powder your nose well, reapply your lead makeup, and prepare for the next round of Romans who think they're irresistible and want proof. You're barely halfway through reapplying your rouge, using the bronze mirror that distorts your face just enough to remind you how unglamorous this profession really is when your shadow lengthens suddenly. You look up, and he's standing there. Your first proper client of the afternoon. You know the type instantly. He's the kind of Roman man who thinks throwing a coin makes him a god, and talking with his mouth full is a mark of culture. His tunic's expensive but stained with wine. His breath is vinegar sour, and he smells like someone poured olive oil on a roast pig and left it in the sun. Sweet Venus herself couldn't outshine you. He slurs. You glance at Livia across the square. She catches your eye and does the universal mime for drunk idiot incoming before turning away with a smirk. Thanks for the backup. Salve, you say. Standing slowly, looking for company or confession. He laughs, then hiccups. Both. You steer him gently toward the alley, again safer, quieter, less likely to be interrupted by market criers yelling about discounted garum sauce. He leans heavily on your shoulder, talking non-stop about his villa outside Tibur, his disdain for stoic philosophers, and the fact that he once arm-wrestled a gladiator. You let him talk. Clients who talk are often easier. They're trying to distract themselves from guilt, nerves, or whatever mother issues they've packed into their coin purse. He drops his coin into your hand, 1 denarius, slightly sticky. You don't ask why. You've learned it's better that way. As you settle into your usual spot in the alley, he begins untying his tunic with the delicacy of someone wrestling a snake. Do you know? He says, I was once mistaken for a senator. You smile politely. Was it dark? He doesn't laugh, but he does grin and wave a finger. Sharp tongue. I like that. Historians still argue whether Roman sex work was seen as necessary evil or just another trade. But for clients like this, it's clearly theater. He's performing. You're performing. The whole thing is a dance with predictable steps, and the goal is to make him feel like Caesar for 5 minutes before he waddles back to his real life. The act itself is mercifully brief. He makes some oddly theatrical noises, says "By Neptune" at one point, and then lies back as if he's conquered Gaul. You straighten your stola, repin a shoulder strap, and pretend to be impressed. Then comes the talking part. He rolls onto one elbow. Do you ever think of leaving this life? You blink. Leaving it to go where Carthage. He frowns thoughtfully, as if considering it. I could take you to my villa. You could be my mistress. You wouldn't have to work anymore. Ah, there it is, the fantasy phase. Every few weeks, a client thinks he's fallen in love. Or, more accurately, he thinks he's noble for rescuing you from your own survival. You used to be flattered. Now you mostly calculate whether this means he'll tip extra or start crying. You tilt your head, and your wife? He hesitates. She's fine. She wouldn't mind. You nod as though considering it, then stand. Well, if you ever build that villa, let me know. Just send word to the alley behind the second best bathhouse in Sabura. He tries to kiss your hand. You withdraw it gently but firmly. No kissing. It's a rule. This isn't entirely true, but it's a useful lie. Some clients take it as mystery, others take it as mercy. He staggers out into the street a few moments later, humming a tune that might be from a funeral or a drinking song, hard to tell. You smooth your stola again and lean back against the wall, counting the coin. Livia appears around the corner like a smug specter. That was quick. Not quick enough. Did he talk about his villa again? Yes, and his gladiator arm wrestling career. She groans. The lies are always the same. I had one last week who said he was secretly the son of Jupiter. What did you tell him? That I charge extra for divine lineage. You both laugh. Across the street, a pair of children chase each other around a market cart, the vendor shouting at them to leave his apricots alone. A woman in a saffron shawl haggles over fish. Rome moves around you like a river, loud, smelly, unstoppable. You shift on your feet, stretch your back, and mentally prepare for the next encounter. Your body aches. Your mouth tastes like metal from the makeup, and your stola's damp at the armpits. But you've got a coin in your hand, a sharp mind, and just enough sarcasm left to survive the next 3 hours. And maybe, if the gods are kind, your next client won't talk about his villa. Back at your post outside the bathhouse, the sun's reached that blinding vertical height where shadows disappear and everything smells more intensely of humanity. Your makeup's melting. Your coin pouch is heavier than it was this morning, but not by much. And you're beginning to wonder whether your sandals were always this uneven, or if it's just your legs giving up. Livia has disappeared inside the bathhouse to cool off, which you suspect is code for eat someone's unattended figs. So you settle in for the lull, a strange, golden hour between the morning drunks and the evening lusty scholars. When the traffic slows and people just talk. That's when you spot him. A man in his late 20s, maybe early 30s, with close-cropped hair and a half-unrolled scroll tucked under his arm. His toga is too white, his teeth too straight, and his eyes dart like a man trying very hard to look like he's not about to buy sex. He circles the plaza twice, stops to smell apples he doesn't buy, spends a full minute pretending to be fascinated by a statue of Mars with a broken nose. Then he finally approaches you cautiously, like you might explode or invoice him on sight. "Salve," he says, clearing his throat. "Lovely afternoon." You nod. Certainly is. Prime weather for awkward conversations. He blinks. Are you available? You lean back, letting the wall support your weight. Depends. You looking for something quick? Or an hour of pretending you're more interesting than your friends? He laughs nervously. Honestly, I wanted to talk. You raise an eyebrow. You know this isn't a forum, right? I don't take payment in debate. He quickly produces 3 asses and places them on the ledge beside you, like he's leaving offerings to a minor goddess of flirtation. You pocket them without a word, mostly because you're curious now. "Sit," you say, patting the ledge. He does, carefully, like he's afraid of catching scandal through proximity. "I'm Lucius," he offers, "scribe for Senator Verinius." "Nice. I'm the woman who just took your money." He blushes. Right, of course, sorry. You study him. Clean nails, ink stains on the thumb, smells faintly of sandalwood and anxiety. Definitely new to this. So, Lucius, what do you want to talk about? Politics, poetry. The best wine to pair with disappointment. He chuckles. Surprised. I've never done this before. Not the talking part. I always thought people like you just wanted the coins, not the words. You shrug. Most days, we do. But sometimes the words are fun, especially if you don't cry halfway through. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers were treated as therapists or just vessels. In your experience, it's about 70% physical service, 20% emotional babysitting, and 10% trying not to scream when someone recites their own poetry. Lucius pulls the scroll from under his arm and shows you the title on the nature of desire. He says it like it's something profound. You say it like it's something you've experienced every angle of physically, emotionally, and occasionally while trying not to get a cramp. I'm writing about what people want, he explains, and how we mask it, by pretending we only want to talk. He smiles. Exactly. You nod. Smart. So, tell me, what do you want? He hesitates, then admits, to be seen. You tilt your head. That's a big one. Most clients want to forget something. Lucius wants to be acknowledged. Seen by who you ask. Me, the senator, the gods. He shrugs. Anyone. You consider that. Then gently adjust the fold of his tunic where it's bunching awkwardly at his shoulder. He stills under your touch, like a statue that just remembered it was made of flesh. There, you say. Now you're seen. He doesn't reply right away. Just watches you with a look that suggests he's trying to memorize the moment. Then he surprises you. Do you ever think about writing, he asks. You laugh. What would I write, dear scroll, today? Someone paid me to whisper that he was the emperor's secret heir. Why not? It's real. That's what people want, real stories. You narrow your eyes. If you steal that line for your scroll, I expect royalties. Agreed. The sun begins to lower slightly, casting long orange beams across the forum. The bathhouse noise fades a bit, replaced by the occasional splash and a distant flute player hitting all the wrong notes. Lucius finally stands, brushing imaginary dust from his knees. Thank you, he says. Really. You're welcome, you reply. That'll be 1 extra coin for the existential clarity. He grins and flips you a fourth as he walks away. You notice he never looked over his shoulder. Most men do. Whether it's guilt or pride or something murkier, they always look back. Lucius didn't. He came to be seen and left satisfied that he was. Livia returns a minute later, holding a plum and chewing thoughtfully. That the guy who thinks with his scroll. Yeah, you say, not the worst one. She nods. Did he cry? Almost. You both sit in the slow, thickening evening heat, the sky now tinged with gold and soot, watching the bath crowd thin out like melted butter on hot marble. The talking hours are over. The night crowd is coming, and they don't want poetry. As the golden edge of evening slides into the dusty blue of twilight, the smell outside the bathhouse shifts subtly from hot sweat and soap to smoke, meat, and something that might be fish but could also be a small crime. Your stomach growls, aggressively. You and Livia glance at each other with the synchronized sigh of two people who have survived the day but haven't quite escaped it, which means it's time for a sacred ritual in your trade dinner, or at least the approximation of it, scavenged between appointments and budgeted with the precision of a senator evading taxes. I got bread, Livia mutters, pulling a chunk of what looks like a brick from the folds of her shawl. You fish a soft fig from your stash, slightly overripe and already leaking sweetness onto your fingers. Trade. Throw in a bite of your cheese. You glare. That cheese came from a real goat. Probably. Fine. Half a bite. You relent. And the exchange commences like a diplomatic treaty, crumbs flying, soft fruit fingers licking, and no utensils in sight. You sit on a step in the alley beside a graffiti-splattered wall while Rome keeps murmuring around you, louder now with the oncoming night. And then, like clockwork, the gossip begins. Livia tears her bread slowly. So, you hear about Scantia? You raise an eyebrow. The blonde one with the fake mole, she got hired by a client who paid her in garum, like actual fish sauce. 3 whole jars. You blink. What's she going to do with it? She's trading it for laundry tokens. You both sit in silence for a beat, then laugh like drunk vestals. That's the thing, no one outside your world really understands. Sex work in Rome isn't just about bodies, it's about survival and information. The bathhouse crowd brings secrets soaked in oil. You know who's cheating, who's stealing, and who just got demoted for trying to bribe a priest. The clients talk, and if they don't, they snore. And sometimes that's just as revealing. Historians still argue whether sex workers were seen as integral to the information networks of Rome, but you know it's true. You and the others are like sponge-stick spies, soaking up half-whispered truths from sweaty, half-naked mouths. Tonight's rumor is especially juicy. You know Crispus Livia says around a mouthful of bread? The guy with the weird pinky. He's got a new mistress. You frown. Wasn't he married to that senator's daughter? Still is. You whistle low. Spicy. Want to know the best part? Livia leans in dramatically. She's a former Vestal virgin. You nearly choke on your fig. That's illegal. That's delicious. You both lean back and cackle. The kind of laughter that belongs to people who have had wine for breakfast and clients with bad breath by noon. Around you, the wall glows faintly orange from torchlight. Somewhere nearby, someone sings off-key. A donkey brays indignantly in the distance, possibly at the song. You finish your dinner with a satisfied sigh, licking juice from your wrist. Your stomach, finally appeased, settles into a dull hum of not hungry. You press a hand against it and glance up at the stars just beginning to prick the sky. Rome may be loud, unclean, and utterly exhausting, but it's never boring. Then Livia leans close again. You ready for the night crowd? You groan, not remotely. But you both stand. Evening in Rome means a new wave of clients, soldiers on leave, traveling merchants who smell like their camels, and drunk poets who want to know if you think their scrolls are too honest. You've heard poems about stars, gladiators, onions, and one especially passionate piece about a runaway duck. And in between, if you're lucky, you get one or two that just want to hold your hand and pretend they're safe. You brush crumbs from your stola, fix your shoulder pin again, and tuck the leftover fig into a fold of cloth. Livia stretches like a cat preparing for battle. You take in first corner. Nah, you go. I need a minute to feel dead inside. She salutes and saunters off, already sizing up the group of men spilling out of the bathhouse with that practiced gaze, half business, half performance. You stay behind for just a moment longer. The wall behind you has a new bit of graffiti, a crude drawing of Venus, probably drawn with wine and boredom, but beside it is something more interesting, your name, or at least a version of it. Flora bene facit. Flora does it well. You snort, a compliment, sort of, or a warning. It depends on who's reading. You trace the letters with one finger and whisper, "Thanks, I guess." Then you adjust your hair, slap your cheeks for color, and head back into the crowd. Dinner's over. The second act begins. As night thickens and the torches crackle to life, casting long, twitching shadows on every cracked column and peeling fresco, you seize the rare opportunity for a brief escape, a quick walk down the block and a quiet turn into one of your favorite hideaways, the Templum Veneris, the little temple of Venus, patroness of love, beauty, fertility, and your unofficial union leader. You pass a bakery still warm from the ovens, dodging a pack of stray dogs arguing over a crust. The air smells like figs soaked in wine and sweat-soaked tunics. But here, inside the temple's low archway, everything shifts. It's cooler, quieter. The air carries a faint whiff of rose oil and crumbling incense. There's no priest present this late, just you, a few flickering oil lamps, and the statue of Venus herself leaning slightly, chipped at the nose, but still smirking like she knows every secret in the city. You walk up to her, drop a half-melted candle stub in the offering bowl, and mutter your usual prayer, half sarcastic, half sincere. Lady Venus, make the next one not smell like goat. Historians still debate how personal religion really was for sex workers. Some say your prayers didn't count. Others say you were the ones Venus listened to most. You prefer to believe she likes a little scandal. Keeps things interesting on Olympus. Beside the statue is a small wall niche once used for sacred scrolls, now full of wax tablets and folded scraps. Notes, curses, confessions. You flip through a few. May Gaius the grain merchant get boils in unspeakable places. Please let Claudius leave his wife. I forgive Lucilla. May she find better clients than I did. You leave a folded sliver of cloth, tied with a tiny string. Inside a single dried fig. Your own silent bribe. Or maybe a joke. You're not sure anymore. You're just about to head back when you hear a soft voice behind you, praying or cursing. You turn. It's Aurelia. You haven't seen her in weeks. She used to work your block, then vanished. Whispers said she'd either married rich or died trying. Turns out it was neither. She just took a break. The kind you can't afford yet. Both, you say. She steps into the light, her curls pinned back with a bronze comb, eyes as tired as yours. Temple's quiet tonight, she murmurs. Good time to thank the gods we're still upright. You nod. She lights her own candle with a practiced flick and sets it beside yours. The two flames lean toward each other, like they've been gossiping in secret. You lean against the cool stone wall, shoulder to shoulder. Ever think of quitting, you ask softly. She shrugs. Every day. But then I remember what my life was before this. Empty belly, empty shoes, empty future. Now it's just full of other people's problems. She chuckles. And fish sauce. You both stay there a while longer, breathing in the calm. The city's noise fades, just enough that the rustle of fig leaves outside the temple feels like a lullaby. Then Aurelia turns to you with a mischievous smile. Want to do something dangerous? You raise an eyebrow. Define dangerous. She pulls a small bag from her belt and opens it inside. Bits of wax, red thread, and what looks suspiciously like a fingernail. A love curse, she whispers. For a client who won't leave me alone. You blink. The soldier with the missing tooth. She nods. Thought he was sweet. Now he's annoying. You laugh, and she sets to work, wrapping the string, folding the wax, mumbling something that might be Latin or might be just angry humming. You're not a superstitious person. Well, not very superstitious. But tonight, under Venus's watchful, noseless gaze, it feels right. Like this little moment of witchcraft might keep you safe just a bit longer. Historians still argue whether Roman women, especially sex workers, really believed in spells, or just performed them as cultural rituals. But you know one thing for certain when everything else is out of your control. Doing something, even lighting a candle or folding a curse, feels like power. You help tie the bundle. Aurelia places it under the statue with dramatic flair. There, she declares, if he dreams of me tonight, may it involve accidental nudity and public shame. You snort. Powerful stuff. Venus has range. You both make your final gestures of thanks and farewell. Stepping back into the night just as a cart rolls past, its wheels rattling like dice. Aurelia peels off toward the Aventine, and you return to your post. Heart just a bit lighter. The bathhouse crowd is changing. The air feels thicker, stickier. Rome's slipping into full night mode now, where secrets sharpen. Desires loosen, and coins trade hands faster than morality. But you've got a candle's worth of grace in your pocket, a whisper of a curse in your mind, and the faint scent of Venus's sanctuary still clinging to your skin. Let the night come. You're ready. You return to your corner just as the moon begins to climb above the rooftops, silvering the cracked tiles and catching glints on polished sandals. It's quieter now, not less busy, just heavier. The city breathes differently after dark. There's something about nighttime in Rome that makes everyone just a little more honest, or a lot more reckless. And that's when you see it. Your name? Scratched, no. Carved into the wall beside your spot. Not just a casual scribble. Someone took time with this. The letters are large, crude, and unmistakably flattering in the most uncomfortable way. Flora Benficit. Flora does it well. You stare at it, hands on your hips. It's not the worst thing someone's ever written about you in public. That title belongs to the guy who scrawled Flora steals souls with her thighs outside a bakery. Still, this one's got energy. It's underlined. Twice. Wow, Livia says, appearing like an alley ghost beside you. Someone's got a fan. Apparently I do things well, with or without your consent. Questionable. She leans in. Is this the senator again? The one who cries and offers you olives. No, he can't spell. You both look at it. The handwriting is awkward, but earnest. Whoever etched this in probably meant it as praise. Maybe. Possibly. Or a warning to future clients. Historians still debate whether this kind of graffiti was advertising, defamation, or ancient Yelp reviews. In your case, it's probably all three. Well, Livia shrugs. At least it's spelled right. Remember when they wrote La Villa smells like fish, but spelled it fesh? Iconic. You can't bring yourself to erase it. It's bad form. And honestly, a little bit flattering. There are worse legacies than being well-reviewed in stone. A group of bathhouse goers passes by, loud, tipsy, slapping each other's backs and quoting bad poetry. One of them slows down as he spots the graffiti. He raises his eyebrows, then looks at you, then back at the wall. You raise yours right back. He scurries after his friends. Livia cackles, "You're famous. Locally infamous." Same thing in Subura. The night crowd begins to shift again. The torches are lower now, casting longer shadows. And your clients take on that particular mix of sleepy and insistent that makes for complicated encounters. You adjust your hair, touch up your rouge with fingers that have lost all sense of daintiness, and try not to think about how sore your feet are. And then, from nowhere, a familiar voice. Flora, you wince. It's the freedman. Every worker has one, the regular who clings too tightly, tips too little, and always brings weird energy. Yours is a freedman named Cinna, a former baker's assistant who now dabbles in import goods and thinks owning 2 tunics qualifies him as elite. He approaches, arms open like he's greeting a long-lost lover. His sandals squeak. One is definitely on the wrong foot. Flora, my goddess, my muse. Cinna, my headache, my recurring obligation. He laughs like you're flirting. You're not. You're conserving energy. He leans in, smelling like garlic, beeswax, and optimism. I have new sandals, he announces proudly. I noticed, are they possessed? He grins and lifts a foot for you to admire. They're leather, overly ornamented, with little bronze studs shaped like phallic amulets. You resist the urge to step back in self-defense. I had them made for my foot, he declares. Which one? He laughs harder. You're funny. That's why I like you. That, and the time you told him he looked like a young Neptune after too much wine. You were joking. He never recovered. Cinna pulls out 2 asses and presses them into your palm with a flourish. A brief visit. My divine one. You sigh, nod, and motion toward the alley. He talks the entire time. About his sandals. About a dream he had where you were riding a sea turtle. About how his neighbors are jealous. About how he thinks his cat might be reincarnated. You don't say much. You mostly hum at the right moments and try to keep your thoughts from escaping your face. The encounter, mercifully, is short. He thanks you profusely, tries to bow, almost falls, then waddles off into the night shouting, "She does it well. She." You glare at the graffiti again. Thanks a lot, Wall. Livia reappears, holding 2 dates and a look of barely concealed amusement. He bring up the sandals, brought them with him. You both chew in silence for a while, watching Rome cycle through its nightly rhythm clients, coins, complaints. The wall beside you glows gently in the torchlight. The words remain. Flora ben facit. You snort. Damn right I do. You're still giggling about the sandals, those cursed jangling monuments to foot-based optimism when something you don't expect happens. A client approaches, but this time it's a woman. You spot her out of the corner of your eye first, tall, cloaked, confident stride, and clearly not here to shop for garum or poetry. Her clothing is expensive, her veil sheer enough to suggest power without revealing identity. This is not the wife of a baker or a nervous debutante. This is someone used to being obeyed. She stops in front of you, and when she lifts the veil, you see she's middle-aged, elegant, and wearing a face that has never been ignored. Are you, Flora? Your heart taps twice against your ribs. Depends who's asking. She lifts a small purse. It chimes like a soft threat. I need your time, she says, and your silence. You blink. You've had women approach before, but rarely so directly. Historians still debate how common same-sex encounters were in Rome, particularly between women. Most male writers pretended it didn't happen unless they could make it into a punchline. But here she is real, well-dressed, and radiating the kind of authority that makes senators nervous. You nod. Follow me. You lead her not to the usual alley, but to your cella, Tiny. Yes, but cleaner, with a curtain and enough incense burned into the walls to overpower the smell of yesterday. You light a small oil lamp and gesture toward the low bench. She sits, takes a deep breath, and then speaks with the tone of someone used to being obeyed but very tired of performing. My husband believes I am at my sister's villa. You smile gently. Then I'm your sister's footman, and we're about to discuss seasonal figs. She exhales. Not a laugh. Exactly, but something looser than silence. I'm not here for service, she says quietly. I want to remember who I was before I became furniture in a marble cage. You understand instantly. She doesn't want your body. She wants your presence, your listening. The invisible labor no coin can fully measure. I charge more for therapy, you say softly, teasing just enough to keep the moment light. She doesn't flinch. Instead, she opens the purse and places 5 denarii on the floor. Your eyes widen more than you make in a week of talking sandal philosophy with Cinna. You sit beside her, close but not touching. I used to sing, she says, voice distant. In Greek. At dinner parties. Before I married. You picture it her. Younger, radiant, loud. Before the weight of property and propriety turned her into decor. Rome does that. Especially to women. It polishes them until they stop shining. Why did you stop, you ask? She looks at her hands. It embarrassed him. Of course it did. You offer her a small clay cup of watered wine. She takes it, but doesn't drink. She just holds it. Like it's the only warm thing she's touched all week. You talk. Or rather, she talks. You listen. She speaks of years locked in silence. Of dinners where she smiled on command. Of servants who pitied her, and daughters who feared becoming her. And through it all, she never says her name. She doesn't need to. This story belongs to every matron who's ever been dressed like a statue and treated like one too. At one point, she lifts a hand, touches your wrist. Her fingers are soft, deliberate. Do you miss love, she asks. You think about that. No, you say finally. But I miss being missed. She nods. You both sit with that. Historians still argue whether Roman matrons had emotional autonomy. Some did. Certainly, but most were married off young, trained to be obedient, and expected to gracefully fade into the background once their sons got political. But here she is, breathing beside you in the lamplight, full of stories, loneliness, and wine she doesn't drink. Eventually, she rises. I should go. You nod. You don't offer to walk her out. She doesn't need that. She's already armoring herself for the world outside. At the doorway, she pauses. I may come again. I'll be here. And then she's gone back into the Roman night, where husbands believe lies and women carry truth like a dagger tucked in their belt. You sit in the quiet for a moment longer, the soft hiss of oil in the lamp the only sound. Then you look down at the coins. 5 denarii, more than payment, a testament. You pocket them carefully. Back outside, Livia is waiting with the expression of someone who smells gossip even before the words arrive. That wasn't a man. Nope. She rich, loaded. Did you? Nope. Livia blinks. So, you're rich and mysterious now. Apparently, she offers you half a date. I hate how aroused I am by that power dynamic. You both giggle. The wall still says Flora Benefacit, but tonight you feel like maybe it means something else. Maybe it's not just about the job. Maybe it's about how you've become a safe place for someone who hasn't felt safe in years. Or maybe you're just tired and poetic because she tipped like a senator. Either way, you've got a little wine left and the smell of rose oil on your sleeves. And the night is still young. The torchlight flickers as the wind shifts just enough to blow the smoke sideways and send a little ash into your eye. You blink it away, smudging your eyeliner in the process, which only makes you look more alluring to the kinds of clients who think mysteriously disheveled is sexy. You decide to leave it. Some of your best tips come when you resemble a Greek tragedy mid-performance. And speaking of tragedy, here comes one now. You see him before he sees you. Short, broad-shouldered, limping slightly with a gait that's part swagger, part sandal-related injury. It's your most devoted regular, the freedman with the foot thing. You brace. He appears with the dramatic flourish of a bad actor arriving late to the forum. Flora, my muse, my marble-browed, ankle-blessed enchantress. Livia, just a few steps away, mutters, "There's the foot guy," then flees before you can beg for backup. You paste on a smile. Evening. Cestius. He lifts his tunic slightly to reveal new sandals. I brought props. Terrifying. Cestius is, in theory, harmless. He's what happens when a man with a minor fortune and major time on his hands decides to redirect his affection from baked goods to your arches. He once wrote you a haiku about your second toe, in Latin. It didn't scan. He produces a coin. You inspect it. A single denarius clean. No sticky residue. No suspicious smells. A miracle. This gets me the premium tour. Yes, you sigh. Only if you don't narrate. I make no promises. You lead him around the corner to the usual spot. A small alcove with half a roof and a faint lingering scent of old incense and laundry soap. You've used it before. It's cleanish. Not the worst place to be admired for your toes. Once seated, he takes out a soft cloth, lays it gently on the stone step, and gestures for your foot like he's about to propose to it. You know, he says reverently, your instep is a triumph of nature. You give him the practiced look of someone who has been paid to listen to worse. You say that to all the insteps, only the worthy ones. He removes your sandal with the delicacy of a priest unwrapping a sacred relic. He sighs. I would write an ode to this heel, he says, but it would lack the nuance. You stare into the middle distance. It's not the weirdest thing you've done, not even top 5. Historians still argue whether the Romans had specific fetishes. The answer is yes. Absolutely. Unequivocally. They carved them into walls, wore them as good luck charms, and sang songs about them. There are statues with extra toes and murals that feature feet in compromising positions. The foot obsession is not modern. You're just on the receiving end of its ancient ancestor. Cestius, bless him, doesn't ask for much. A foot to hold. A little conversation. The occasional moan of aesthetic appreciation. You give him 15 minutes, one polite giggle, and a gentle reminder that the gods probably don't care about foot symmetry. He leaves happy. You leave slightly baffled, but wealthier. When you return to the corner, Livia's waiting with a look. You survived. He sniffed my ankle. That's 2 denarii minimum. He tipped. Ooh. You high-five each other like triumphant gladiators. Then you settle in, glancing around the dimming plaza. The crowd has thinned a bit, but it's still full of shifting potential. The kind of potential that usually ends with someone offering to pay you in figs or interpretive poetry. I had one once, Livia says, who asked me to tie his caligae while whispering battle strategies. Did you? Of course, I made up 3 new legions and a river. Did he notice? He gave me a bonus for historical accuracy. You both laugh. It echoes off the stone and startles a passing pigeon into flight. These are the stories that never make it into scrolls. The quiet absurdities. The whispered fantasies. The night spent convincing someone their very specific desire is the most natural thing in the world, at least for the price they're offering. You reach down, adjust your sandal, and catch yourself smirking. Maybe Cestius is strange, but strange pays, and strange, at least, is honest. You never have to wonder what he wants. You stretch your feet out onto the warm stone, lean back, and close your eyes for a moment. Then Livia adds, by the way, he drew your foot on the bathhouse wall. You groan. It's labeled, she adds helpfully, with arrows. Of course it is. You make a mental note to check it later. Maybe add a small edit. Maybe draw a hat on it. Rome may crumble one day. The empire may fall. The temples collapse. The senators forget how to bathe. But somewhere, deep on a wall near the second bathhouse on the left, your left foot will be immortal. You're back at your post, wiping sandal sweat from your forehead with a corner of your stola. When you notice something wrong, not client wants you to dress like Minerva wrong. No logistical crisis wrong. The bathhouse has gone oddly quiet. You glance over. The entrance is closed, the usual steam not billowing from the vents. And there's a cluster of half-naked men standing around looking confused and clutching towels. You call to one of the attendants, a lanky teenager with more body oil than sense. What's going on? He shrugs, drain backed up, full of hair and something that used to be alive. You blink. The whole bathhouse is closed for the night, he says grimly, rubbing his nose with a hand that probably shouldn't touch noses. You groan. Great. The bathhouse is your customer funnel. Without it, the foot traffic drops, and your clients become either drunker, dirtier, or both. You turn back to Livia, who's already eyeing the street like a cat in a drying pond. No baths means no business, she says. No baths also means no place to clean up between clients. She winces. We're about to become feral courtesans. You glance at your satchel and your emergency hygiene kit, a strip of linen, a bottle of rose water, and a handful of mint leaves you keep forgetting to chew. It's not nothing, but it's not exactly luxurious. Historians still debate how much access sex workers had to public facilities like baths. Technically, anyone with a coin could go. Realistically, it depended on the mood of the attendants, your client's social class, and how much skin you were showing. Tonight, with the main bathhouse shut down, your options are severely limited. You consider your alternatives. Option 1. Bribe your way into the temple baths. Risk offending Venus and the temple guards. Option 2. Sponge bath in your cella. Risk getting caught by Cestius mid-sandal sonnet. Option 3. Do what everyone else in Subura does, pretend dirt is charming. You settle on a version of option 2. You head back to your cramped cella, strip to your shift, and begin the delicate dance of splash, scrub, and pray. The air's warm, so the water doesn't sting too badly, and your fingers find familiar bruises from bumping into architecture, elbows, and occasional knees. You use half your rose water, not because you're feeling fancy, but because it's either that or smell like the corner behind the garum stall. You hum a little tune as you work, one you picked up from a musician who paid you in rhymes. Something about moonlight and goats. You're halfway through wringing out your cloth when you realize something important is missing. Your sponge on a stick. It's not in its spot. You freeze. This is not just a cleaning implement. It is the cleaning implement. A standard Roman hygiene tool, sometimes shared in the baths, but, in your case, kept very personal. Without it, your entire cleansing routine falls apart. It's like losing a toothbrush, or a shield in battle, or both. You search your belongings. Nothing. Check your satchel. Nothing. Glare at the corner where Livia sometimes leaves surprise pranks. Nothing. Livia, you yell! She pokes her head in, casually peeling a fig. Yes. Sponge thief. You took it. I absolutely did not. That sponge is cursed. Someone took it? She enters, glances around, shrugs. Maybe it grew legs and left. Finally had enough. You groan. This is the moment when the ancient world's lack of plumbing hits you hardest. Without your sponge, your hygiene strategy becomes guesswork and blind optimism. You manage a rinse with your linen cloth, then air yourself dry like a disgruntled Venus caught in a breeze. Later, on your way back to your post, you see it, hanging from a stick, stuck in the graffiti wall, like a trophy. Is that... Oh gods, Livia whispers. They mounted it. Your sponge, your sacred hygienic sidekick, has been promoted to a public joke. It dangles next to the phrase, Flora's sponge, touched by immortals. You close your eyes. I'm going to murder whoever did this. Too late, it's now a shrine. Don't say that. There's already a fig underneath it. You snort despite yourself. You retrieve the sponge with appropriate reverence, wipe it off on a tunic corner, and glare around the square. A few passers-by smirk. Someone claps. A child offers you a flower, which you accept in confused dignity. You return the sponge to your room and give it the closest thing to a proper funeral cleansing you can. You even mutter a few words of blessing, which may or may not be curses. You're not sure anymore. They start to blur after midnight. And with that, your evening reboots. The clients return slowly, a few regulars, a few hopefuls, one man who pays you to just stand beside him silently while he recites a law code. You don't ask why. You just correct his pronunciation when it gets really bad. You're exhausted, slightly damp, smelling of rosewater and revolution, but your sponge is back. Your hygiene is restored. And somewhere in the city, someone is probably composing a limerick about it. It's deep into the night now, the kind of hour when time feels unpinned, when the moon seems way too curious about your business, and Rome, despite all its stone and law and civility, starts to pulse with something more feral. You're leaning against your favorite bit of graffiti, yes. The one about your sponge when trouble approaches, not in the usual, oh no, he wants to reenact the Iliad kind of way. No. This is the kind of trouble that walks upright, wears sandals way too clean for this part of town, and has the subtle, bone-deep energy of a bureaucrat who thinks they can ruin your evening. A pair of lictors, city security, dressed in those stiff, boring tunics with little rods tucked in their belts, emerge from the darkness like judgment in human form. Flora, the taller one, asks, "You blink?" "No, she's off tonight. I'm Venus, filling in." He doesn't laugh. Of course he doesn't. These types are carved from leftover marble. The shorter one pulls out a small scroll, unrolls it, clears his throat. You've been named in a report. You cross your arms for suspicion of sorcery. There it is. You pause. Say nothing. Wait, because there's always more. We received word. The lictor continues that you sold a charm to a senator's nephew. Something to affect his love life. You blink slowly. What kind of charm? A carved bone, tied with hair, buried under a fountain. You raise an eyebrow. Sounds like poor taste, not sorcery. The taller lictor adds, he now believes he's cursed. Well, you mutter, he did pay in counterfeit coins. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers regularly dabbled in magic, but accusations weren't rare. Whether it was love potions, curses, or fertility spells. Anything a man didn't understand, especially anything that didn't go his way, was easy to blame on women. Especially women who weren't supposed to have power in the first place. The lictors don't care about nuance, they care about order. Do you deny using spells, the short one asks? You hold up both hands. The only spell I've ever cast is convincing drunk senators they're attractive. Even the tall one almost smiles at that. Still, they take your name, your real one, your legal one, the one your Leno registered when you were officially declared a working woman under Roman law. They jot it down with that infuriating finality that means bureaucracy has taken notice. And bureaucracy in Rome is more dangerous than any sword. They warn you don't leave the city, don't try to destroy the alleged charm, and for Jupiter's sake, don't visit any temples after sundown. They walk off into the night, their footsteps perfectly in sync, as if they've been rehearsing all their lives for this exact role, fun police. You exhale. Livia slides into view like a cat who witnessed everything from behind a pillar. So, are we enchanted now? Worse, we're in a file. You tell her what happened. She nods sagely. Definitely Felix, she says. Felix, senator's nephew. Tall, pouty, pays in bad coins. Always asks for a pillow ritual. You snort, he cried afterward. Most of them do. You consider your options. You could confront Felix, demand he retract the complaint, or bribe someone, or try to explain to the lictors that half the women in Subura tie bones to things and bury weird objects for fun. It's cultural. Instead, you go with Plan D, sit very still and eat the emergency date you keep tucked in your sleeve. Livia offers you half a candied fig she's been saving for emotional emergencies. This qualifies. You know what this means, she says through a mouthful of sugar. What? You're famous twice now. Oh joy. First, for doing it well. Now, for doing it magically. You pause. Then laugh. A long, wheezy, can't help it laugh that echoes across the quiet stones and makes a passing dog bark once in solidarity. Flora benefitut, you mutter. And now, Flora bene maledicta. You both collapse against the wall. The kind of laughter that hurts your ribs and smudges your mascara and tastes vaguely of despair and honey. Rome is chaos. The law is a farce. And you're being accused of enchantment by a boy who once asked if nipples could be haunted. Still, the stars are out. You've got a coin in your belt. And you're surrounded by the finest company a witch courtesan could ask for. You lean your head on Livia's shoulder and whisper, if they burn me, tell them I hexed the bathhouse drain. She pats your hand. I'll testify to the smell alone. Later that night, when the square has quieted and the bathhouse crowd has either gone home or passed out mid-olive, you decide it's time for a break, an actual break. Not the kind where you lean against a wall and pretend to be invisible. A moment for yourself, to feel like a person, not a performance. So, you sneak off, past the sponge shrine, past the graffiti, through a shadowy cut between two wine shops, and down the sloping path that leads to the Ludus Magnus, the gladiator training school. Because, of course, this is where your favorite distraction lives. He's not a client. Not exactly. You've never charged him. He's never asked to pay. He's just there. A ridiculous pile of muscles with a soft spot for figs and a sense of humor slightly better than average for someone who fights for a living. You slip in through the back, past the sleeping guards who long ago decided you weren't a threat, and tiptoe into the kitchen area, where the smell of roasted chickpeas and burnt lentils clings to every surface. And there he is, Drusus, bare-chested, half asleep, and gnawing on what might be an entire roasted bird. You never ask where he gets them. He looks up, squints, and grins. Thought I smelled sarcasm. Thought I smelled unwashed gladiator. He waves you over. You perch beside him on the grain sack, stealing a fig from his plate. He doesn't stop you. He never does. You sit in comfortable silence for a while, the warmth from the hearth making your skin relax in ways the Roman economy never allows. "How's the night?" he asks eventually. "Someone accused me of sorcery." "Did you hex them?" "Not yet." He offers you a hunk of bread. You've got the laugh for it. You smile, then frown slightly. It's getting harder. The clients are weirder. The baths smell worse. "My sponge was hung like a trophy." He snorts. "Sounds like you're winning." You sigh. "I don't know. Some nights, I feel like I'm just disappearing, like I'm a character someone else is writing." He leans back, arms behind his head, the lamplight catching the scars across his collarbone. "You think I feel any different? I get hit for a living. Half the time by people who clap afterward." You look at him. "Do you ever dream about leaving?" He shrugs. "Sure. I dream about buying a little cart, selling olives, yelling at pigeons. But then I wake up and remember I'm good at what I do. So are you. Being good at it doesn't mean it's what we're meant to do. Nothing means anything. Flora. That's what makes figs taste sweeter." You chew on that. And the fig. Historians still argue about the inner lives of gladiators. Some say they were pure tools of state violence. Others say they were celebrities, living fast and dying faster. But you know at least one who is thoughtful, kind, and steals birds from the kitchens at night for philosophical chats. Drusus lies down, folding his arms under his head. You follow suit. The floor hard and unforgiving, but somehow less so than the street. You lie there side by side, not touching, just breathing. The room smells like oil and grain and warm dust. The fire crackles. Your body begins to remember what it's like to not be watched, weighed, or wanted. Just to be. You whisper. "Do you think I'm really cursed?" "Only in the charming way. You'd tell me if I was actually hexed, right?" "Flora, if anyone put a spell on you, they'd be hexed first." You walk like a dagger in a silk pouch. You snort. "That's dramatic. I get hit in the face for a living." Drama is survival. A pause. Then, very quietly, he says, "You could stay here tonight. No pressure. Just not out there." You consider it. It's tempting. No clients. No graffiti. No sponge shrine whispering weird fame into the dark. But also, no coins. "I've got a few hours left." You murmur. "Rent's due." He doesn't argue. He just nods. Because Drusus gets it. The economy of being alive in Rome is brutal math. You sit up, straighten your stola, brush crumbs off your lap. He looks at you. "Come back when you're rich. Come back when you stop stealing birds." You leave through the same back door. The city immediately swallowing you again sounds louder, smells sharper, shadows more suspicious. But for a little while, you were more than the job. You were you. And that's enough to carry you through the rest of the night. You're back on the street now, the torches guttering lower, the stars fainter behind the faint haze of cooking smoke and imperial ambition. Rome after midnight is a strange beast, less of a city. More of a whisper, fewer carts, more shadows, fewer watchmen, more secrets. And your mind starts to drift. It begins with your feet. They ache in that oddly nostalgic way that only a long shift can cause. Then your knees start to whisper complaints, and your back sends a polite note asking for retirement. And in that soft, sleepy ache comes the thought. What if it all ended? Not in tragedy, not in scandal, but just stopped. You lean against a cool column, arms folded, and let your imagination open like a scroll. What if you weren't here? What if you were somewhere else? Anywhere else, where sandals didn't pinch and no one had ever asked you to whisper their name in a sultry tone while discussing crop yields. You close your eyes, and suddenly you're dreaming while still awake. You're in a quiet house in the hills outside the city. The kind with a garden and shade, and walls that don't echo with every client's sigh. You're sitting under a fig tree, drinking wine from a glass cup because in this fantasy, you've upgraded. There's a dog snoring at your feet, and someone not a client, not a stranger, hands you a warm piece of bread without asking for anything in return. You sigh. In your dream, you're not a sex worker. You're not Flora. You're just you. And then, just for fun, your dream self strolls into the future. You picture a room with glowing walls, People wearing strange tunics with no belts. They talk to flat boxes and laugh into glowing stones. And they're reading about you. You, the ancient Roman sex worker. One leans in, wide-eyed. Did you know they used crocodile dung as birth control? Another replies. And they had sponge-on-a-stick toilets. It's all in the article. Someone else adds, she once got accused of witchcraft just for being interesting. And you dream, you smile, because they're talking about you. Centuries later, you, who no one paid attention to except when they wanted something. You, whose name is scratched into a crumbling bathhouse wall next to a poorly drawn fish. Historians still argue whether everyday people in Rome knew their stories would last, whether they understood that potsherds and graffiti and coins would be studied like scripture. But here you are, mid-dream, imagining yourself as footnote, folklore, and myth. Flora bene facet. Someone whispers in your dream. A child in the future, reading your name from a museum placard. You blink, shake yourself, and come back to now. The stone is cold at your back. The night air tastes like smoke and ripe olives. A man stumbles by, too drunk to stand, too proud to fall. A dog chases a rat down a sewer grate. The usual orchestra of late-night Rome. And you smile. Because maybe this life odd and sticky and exhausting isn't forever. Maybe one day, someone will remember not just the empire or the emperors, but you. Maybe some scholar will sit hunched over a tablet and read your name carved into a bathhouse wall and wonder who you were. Not just what you did, but who. Maybe they'll picture you as you are now, half laughing, half tired, fully alive. You stretch your arms overhead, joints popping like old amphorae, and glance around. No clients for the moment. No sandals being waved at you. Just you, Rome, and a quiet hour of stolen thought. Then a voice behind you. Excuse me, are you Flora? You turn young, nervous, holding a single coin like it might solve his whole life. You sigh and smile. Depends who's asking. The boy is barely 20, if that. Hair too neatly combed, tunic too stiff, and sandals so new they squeak with every step. He stands in front of you like someone trying very hard to look like he belongs here while quietly vibrating with terror. You know the type, Flora, he asks again, voice cracking just slightly. You nod. That's what they tell me. He fumbles with the hem of his tunic, then with the coin in his hand, which he nearly drops, then does drop, then picks up so fast he hits his own knee. You tilt your head. First time. He freezes, then nods, slowly, like it's a confession. You soften. There's a certain look they all have, the first-timers. Not the drunk ones or the bored patricians, but the real ones. The ones who've waited weeks, built up courage, sweated through the decision, and now here they are, wondering what happens next. You reach out gently. What's your name? He blinks. Marcus. All right, Marcus. Are you here because you want to be here? Not your friends. Not a dare. He swallows. Me, just me. You smile. Then you're already doing better than half the men I see. He lets out a strangled laugh, which turns into a hiccup. You gesture toward the alley, not the sponge shrine one, and lead him there slowly, giving him time to back out. He doesn't. Once you're in the quiet space between buildings, lit only by the moon and one flickering torch, you sit beside him on the low wall. Here's the secret, you say gently. There's no script. He looks relieved and terrified at once. You tell me what you want, I tell you what's possible. And no one ends up crying unless they really want to. He nods. I don't want everything, he blurts. I think I need someone to see me. Not touch, not tonight. You look at him, really look, and what you see is someone trying to figure out who he is. You came to the right woman, you say, patting the stone beside you. He smiles, just barely. You sit there together for a long time, talking, not about Rome, not about coins or politics, about music, about dreams, about how he once wanted to be a baker, but has been told he's going to be a lawyer and doesn't know if that's a blessing or a sentence. You don't give advice. That's not your job. You just listen, which, strangely enough, is the rarest service you offer. At one point he says, I thought I'd be more scared. You are more scared. You tease. You're just hiding it better. He laughs again. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers offered emotional labor, or if that's just us projecting modern sensibilities backward. But you know the truth. Sometimes the most expensive thing you give is the space for someone to feel like a person. Eventually, he hands you the coin one as and you take it without hesitation. You can stay longer, you say softly. But he shakes his head. I think I got what I came for. And then he does something unexpected. He hugs you. It's awkward, a little too tight, smells like nervous sweat and fresh soap. But it's real. You pat his back. Go easy on yourself. He steps away, nods, then disappears back into the Roman night with the peculiar bounce of someone who feels lighter. You sit there a little longer, thinking about how often your job is mistaken for just one thing. It's not about sex. Not really. It's about need. About how many shapes that need takes. Sometimes it's sweaty, sometimes it's poetic, and sometimes it's just a boy needing someone to tell him he's not broken. Livia appears, half a peach in hand. Did the tiny one cry? Almost. Did he quote Virgil? No, but he wants to be a baker. She whistles. We should keep him. You smile. You're tired, but not in the way you usually are. Tonight, your exhaustion feels useful, like you poured yourself into something that mattered. You ever think we should charge more for the talking you ask? All the time, she says, chewing. It's the most dangerous thing we offer. You both sit in silence, watching Rome breathe. The lamps flicker. Somewhere nearby, a dog howls and is immediately told to shut up by 3 different voices. Life continues. And you stretch your arms, tuck the coin into your pouch, and whisper, Flora bene audit. Flora listens well. You're just starting to do that thing where you lean against a warm bit of stone and pretend to be decorative when you feel it again, the shift in the air. That strange hush that means someone nearby isn't here to buy, to leer, or to request dramatic foot sonnets. Someone is watching for a different reason. You glance to your left. A man you've never seen before is standing a few feet away, arms crossed, brow furrowed like he's trying to solve a puzzle he forgot how to ask. He's dressed like a poet, long tunic, soft shoes, ink-stained fingers, and wears the permanent squint of someone who reads more than he talks. He steps forward. You're Flora. You blink. I am, and you're interrupting my break. He smiles faintly. I was told you. Speak well. That depends. Are you looking to be comforted or insulted? I'm a writer, he replies. Same thing. You like him already. He pulls out a small wax tablet and stylus, both smudged with use. I'm compiling stories, he says. Real ones, not the kind men invent in the baths. I want to talk to someone who actually lives in this city. You arch an eyebrow. And you decided a sex worker was the most trustworthy source. Who else talks to everyone? Touché. You fold your arms. You ping, double the going rate, for conversation only. You squint, no metaphors. Only the good kind. You gesture toward a low wall nearby. Sit. He does. Carefully, like someone used to furniture that costs more than your monthly rent. You sit beside him, tilt your head, and ask, what do you want to know? He hesitates. Everything? So you begin. You tell him about the man who paid you to dress like his wife and scold him. About the boy who tipped you in lottery tokens and a dead beetle. About the gladiator who gives you stolen figs and soft silences. About the time you lost your sandal mid-session and improvised with a laurel wreath. You don't lie, but you do embellish. He listens. Really listens. Occasionally scribbles something down, but mostly just watches you talk like you're the most fascinating scroll in the library. At one point, he interrupts. You don't sound like someone who hates her work. You look at him. You don't ask like someone who pities mine. He smiles. I'm trying not to. You nod, then keep asking. So he does. About clients. About street politics. About the way the alley smells at dawn when the market stalls are still asleep and the bathhouse hasn't woken up yet. You tell him how the hardest part of the job isn't the touching, it's the pretending. Pretending they're funny. Pretending their coin is enough. Pretending you're not constantly calculating risk, value, and exit strategy every second. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers had space for internal monologue, whether they thought about legacy. But here you are, dictating yours to a stranger with good boots and too much empathy. Eventually, he sets down his stylus. You're not what I expected. You smirk. Good. I charge extra for cliches. He chuckles. Do you ever think about writing it yourself? You raise an eyebrow. And what would I write? Today I was paid in sausage and regret. I'd read it. You consider it. I'd need a better ending. He looks at you for a long moment, Not in that hungry, appraising way so many do, but with the curiosity of someone who sees you as a whole person and not just a service. "I'd like to come back," he says softly. "Talk more." You nod. "Next time bring wine and better metaphors." He stands, leaves 2 denarii on the wall, and walks off into the Rome night without looking back. You tuck the coins into your sash, then sit in the quiet that follows. Brain still buzzing. Livia appears moments later, eyes narrowing. "Who was that?" "A writer," she gasps. "Did you survive?" "Barely." She sits beside you, handing you half a fig. "Did he try to quote Ovid at you?" "No, he listened." "Disgusting." You both giggle. Then you go quiet, because something about tonight feels different. Like your story, your actual story, might live longer than your sandals, your sponge, or even your infamous graffiti. Like maybe someone out there is going to write it down, and maybe, for once, you won't have to write it in someone else's sweat. It's getting close to the hour when even Rome begins to yawn. The torchlight is dimming. The bathhouse crowd has thinned to a trickle of late leavers and barefoot stragglers, and you've made exactly enough money to pay rent, eat tomorrow, and maybe, just maybe, bribe someone to stop asking about the love spell scandal. You're just about ready to pack it in when he appears. Not a regular, not a weirdo, not a sandals are my destiny type. No, this one is different. You see him before he sees you standing across the square, holding something behind his back. He's tall, not particularly clean, and has the vague look of someone who just argued with a goat and lost. But his eyes, when they land on you, are clear and nervous. He walks toward you slowly, deliberately, like he's trying to decide whether this is the best idea of his week or the worst of his entire lineage. "Flora," he says, and his voice is soft in a way that makes you instantly suspicious. "Present," you reply. He pulls the thing from behind his back. It's a small bouquet. "Of roses?" You blink. Now, flowers are not unheard of. Sometimes clients get theatrical, or guilty, or both. But this man doesn't seem guilty. He seems hopeful, which is way worse. "I've seen you around." He says, I just wanted to say you seem like someone who deserves flowers." You stare at him. "Do you say that to all the women standing outside bathhouses at 2 in the morning? He chuckles. "No, just the ones with sponge-related fame." You stifle a smile. "Damn it." He offers the bouquet. You hesitate. Then take it. They're fresh. Not stolen from a grave. Not wilted. Not stuffed with hidden coins. Real, honest, fragrant. And now your hands smell like trust, which is inconvenient. "So," you say cautiously, "are you buying time or just handing out compliments?" He scratches the back of his neck. "I don't really know." You nod. "Fair." You sit down on your usual step, still holding the flowers. He joins you, but not too close. You can feel the heat radiating off his skin, part embarrassment, part general Rome at night humidity. "I'm not good at this," he admits. "At flowers. At people." You laugh, you and half the Senate. He's quiet a moment, then says, "I didn't come here to ask for anything. I've watched you. Not in a creepy way. That's what all the creepy ones say. No, I mean, you always look like you belong here. Like you know something the rest of us don't." You glance at him, a little sideways. "And you wanted to buy it with roses." "No, I just wanted you to know someone noticed." You sit with that. Historians don't spend much time on this part, the blurry boundary between affection, performance, and something else that doesn't fit neatly into scrolls. What happens when someone offers you kindness without demand? When the game you've mastered suddenly shifts into a new board with no rules? You place the flowers beside you on the step. "Do you want to stay?" you ask. "Just sit." He nods. "That'd be nice." So you do. You watch the city together. A few more bathers shuffle out. Someone knocks over a jug. A dog chases a cat into an alley and immediately regrets it. Life continues, gently ridiculous. After a while, he speaks again. "My name's Tiberius." You tilt your head. Fancy name for a man who hands out flowers in Sabura. "My mother was ambitious." "I can relate." He smiles. "And you do something wild." You smile back. You don't ask him to leave. You don't charge him. You don't even ask what his deal is. You just sit. Because sometimes, even in a city that smells like cooked garum and sandal wax, with bathhouses full of politicians and alleyways full of curses, you get one night when someone shows up, not to take, but just to be. And maybe you don't fall in love, but you fall in pause. In Rome, that's even rarer. Livia appears briefly, sees the flowers, raises both eyebrows so high they nearly detach from her forehead, then wisely walks away without comment. You and Tiberius sit in silence. The torch gutters lower. The moon has gone all soft around the edges. And you feel something flicker in your chest. It's not love, not yet. But maybe it's the beginning of a very unexpected footnote. Tiberius eventually stands, brushing his tunic like he's dusting off second thoughts. I should let you rest, he says. You nod, not because you want him to leave, but because if he stays any longer, you might start doing something dangerous like hoping. He hesitates. Then, very carefully, he reaches into his belt pouch and pulls out a single silver coin, a denarius. But he doesn't hand it to you. I'm not paying, he says quickly. This is just insurance, in case I do something dumb like come back. You glance at the coin, then at him. I don't take prepayment for existential crises. It's not payment, it's permission. You smile, to be awkward again. To be real, you accept the coin not because you need it, but because it's something else entirely now. A marker, a maybe, a thing to be counted but not yet spent. He nods once, then walks off into the dark, not looking back. And just like that, he's gone. You sit there a moment longer, holding the cool weight of the coin in your palm. Then you rise, slow and stiff, and begin the last ritual of the night, the count. You pull out your pouch, duck into your cella, and pour the coins onto the floor like some strangely specific dragon tallying her hoard. Let's see. 3 asses from the nervous boy who only wanted to be seen. 1 sticky denarius from the drunk man who thought he was a senator. 2 asses from the apprentice with the honey cake. A denarius from the sandal poet. 5 silver from the elegant matron with the lost voice. 2 denarii from the writer with the soft boots and dangerous questions. And 1 single silver coin from a man who handed you roses and didn't ask for anything in return. You line them up, straighten them, count twice. Not just money. These are receipts for your evening laughs, lies, loneliness, and fleeting glimpses of something that might almost be connection. You scoop them back into the pouch with a soft clink. It's not a fortune, but it's enough. Historians still argue whether Roman sex workers had savings, retirement plans, secret stashes. Some did, some didn't. You've got a loose brick under your cot with 6 more coins and a piece of green glass you keep for luck. You tuck tonight's earnings in beside them. Then you stretch. The air inside your cella is warm, perfumed faintly with rosewater, fig residue, and the ghost of sandal wax. You light a final candle and settle onto your straw mat, pulling your stola over your shoulders like a blanket. It's not comfortable. The straw scratches. The pillow is still just a rolled-up tunic, but your body is too tired to protest. You lie there for a moment, eyes tracing the flickering shadows on your ceiling. A beetle scuttles across the floor. You name him Gaius. He seems like the type who overstays his welcome. Outside, Rome murmurs. Not asleep. Never that. But quieter. Like a drunk uncle finally slumped in a chair. Still breathing, but no longer yelling about the Republic. You close your eyes, and just before you drift off, you whisper to no one in particular, Flora bene facit. And this time, it feels true. Your eyes flutter open sometime around dawn, not fully awake, not entirely asleep. Just in that floaty middle space where the straw beneath you feels less like pokey inconvenience and more like a rustic cloud. You don't move yet, because in this moment, you are no one's worker, no one's sponge wielder, no one's part-time therapist or foot muse. You're just a body, warm, still, breathing in and out with the rhythm of the city itself. You stretch 1 foot out of your blanket, toe brushing cool stone. The candle you forgot to snuff has burned out on its own, leaving a tiny puddle of wax on the floor beside your lucky glass shard. You'll scrape it up later. Or maybe not. Let it layer. Become part of the decor. The sound of early Rome rises like bread in the oven, soft footsteps of bakers setting up their stalls, the distant rumble of a wheelbarrow with an ungreased axle, the splash of someone rinsing out last night's sins from a bucket. You sit up slowly, hair tangled, shoulders stiff. But you smile. You survived another day, another night, another entire cycle of performance and personhood, of laughter and transaction. of tiny emotional surgeries performed in the alley beside a sponge shrine. You pad barefoot to the edge of your cella and peek through the curtain. The street is mostly empty. A cat watches you from the wall, its tail flicking like it knows your secrets and finds them amusing. The graffiti's still there, your name, your reputation, and that lovingly scratched artistic interpretation of your sponge. You shake your head. Art lives forever. Rome begins again, and you with it. You take a small cloth, wipe the corners of your eyes, and splash water on your face from a chipped clay bowl. The water is cold enough to make you gasp, which is the closest thing to coffee you'll get today. You change into a fresher stola, only slightly stained, and repin your brooch with a practiced hand. Your hair is a mess, so you twist it into a knot, stab it with a comb, and call it rustic elegance. Then, with a quiet sigh, you retrieve the little clay vial of perfume. You hesitate for just a second. Then you dab a tiny bit behind each ear, along your collarbone. And because it's your thing now, a whisper across your ankle. Sandal poetry must be maintained. You stand in the doorway, soaking in the city's morning breath. You think about the poet who wants your story, the boy who just needed to be heard, the matron who remembered she had a voice, the gladiator with stolen figs and kind eyes, and the man with the roses, who didn't want anything but to make you smile. You press a hand to your coin pouch, feel the weight of every story inside. You're not rich, not by Roman standards, but you're full, and in a world like this one, being full of stories, of kindness, of survival is wealth. You step into the street, your city, your chaos, your stage. You take your place beside the bathhouse, under the faded mural of Venus, and greet the first blurry-eyed bather with a smile that says, "Yes, I'm still here, and yes, I still do it well." The stones beneath your feet are warm now. The sky above has faded to a soft, silvery blue. The sounds of the city blur into a low hum, a blend of sandals shuffling, birds calling, and faint laughter that could be yours. Let that rhythm settle into your breath. Let your shoulders soften. You've wandered ancient streets tonight, listened to whispered gossip, dodged bureaucracy, soothed aching hearts, and survived sandal-related poetry. You've met people who asked for much, gave little, or surprised you with unexpected gentleness. You've been smart, kind, tired, sarcastic, and deeply human. And now, you've earned your rest. So lie back, just like Flora on her straw mat. The flicker of lamplight fading across your ceiling. Let your body sink. Let your breath slow. Let the noise of the city recede into a soft murmur behind your thoughts. There's nothing more to do right now. No coins to count. No steps to retrace. Just the soft hush of sleep calling your name whispered like a secret in the alley behind a bathhouse. You're safe. You're full. And you are, in your own strange way, legendary. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.